This video has been made with the purpose of education and awareness of real crimes, and there is no disrespect intended to anyone. This is to help promote truth and justice for anyone who has been a victim of crime. What I'm about to report is what I have researched online, and I will welcome any corrections should they be required. Hello there, Little Berry True Crime fans, Area Berry here. Been a while since I've been on the channel. This particular case has been very, very difficult to research. Some personal issues going on as well, but I'm trying to put out quality content as much as I possibly can. And as you can see behind me, I've put some of my artwork up. The trippy looking one behind me, the purpley one looking behind me is one I was going to give to a friend, but it's not perfect, so I'm going to do another one for them. This just says, it's probably going to be in reverse on screen, but this says now, just to remind me that there's no time like now. And here I've got a chalkboard where I can just put a daily affirmation. I've put there, forgive for me. Like, forgiveness is for me, it's not for you. It's something that I need to let myself go. The one above that is the one I'm most proud of, and I'll show you that now. There, it's glittery gold and silver, black matte, and champagne gold, true gold, and all of that. So that's what it is. And I'm going to put some more art here because I've got a bit of a bare wall right here. So something else is going to go there, probably something a bit like this, but in different colours and tones. And I really hope you enjoy the case that we have for you today. Lars Mittank was born on the 9th of February in 1986 in Berlin, Germany. He lived in two different places throughout his life, a place called Marn and another place called Itzehoe, Germany. And I believe his family still live in Itzehoe, although his extended family still live in Marn. After graduating high school, Lars decided that he would do an apprenticeship and earn his engineering degree through work. So basically working and learning at the same time. He eventually became an engineer working at the I think I'm pronouncing this right, Wilhelmshaven coal power station, where he worked as an operator engineer. He did so well in his degree, he absolutely aced it. He had to move though. It was about 100 miles away from his family in Itzehoe, so he didn't like being away from his family. He was very, very close to his mother Sandra. He was close to all of his family. He had great friends there. But in 2012, when Lars was 26 years old, his father required round-the-clock care after suffering a stroke, and Sandra Mittank became her husband's full-time carer. Lars lived quite a way away, but this is how loving and giving Lars was. He would fly home almost every weekend on a Friday and go back in time for his Monday work, so he could just give his mum a little bit of respite once a week and help her out. He could also catch up with his family, he could catch up with his friends. He had a girlfriend, he was earning a decent living. He had a lot going for him. He was very fit and healthy as well, very conscious of diet and nutrition. He wasn't a fan of fast food and takeouts. He loved his fruit and his veg. He loved football. He was very sporty, very much into his sport. He had close male friends. He was just generally a friendly, peaceful, easygoing person that people love to get to know. Lars was also an avid outdoorsman. He could fish and he was a good swimmer, and he did actually go on many excursions weekends away where he would need to, live in rugged terrain. He was quite capable and adept at surviving in those situations. He reminds me a bit of Bear Grylls, can turn the hand to doing anything and make them, survive on anything, be able to do anything they can in nature, and like fishing and hiking and that kind of thing. But Lars loved football or soccer. In UK, football is soccer. So I know in America, football is a very different sport to soccer. So he was a soccer fan, huge soccer fan, and it was a passionate supporter of SV Werder Bremen. If I'm pronouncing that wrong, I do apologise. He regularly attended matches and loved to play sports himself. In June 2014, at the age of 28, 5 of Lars's friends asked him to go on holiday with them to Varna, Bulgaria. Now, Lars hadn't normally been on what they normally would call a lad's holiday, where they would go to bars and clubs and drink and socialise. That wasn't really his kind of holiday, and it really surprised his mother that he agreed to go on this holiday. But to be honest, the pressure of selflessly putting himself out there, having to travel all the time, and his job and looking after his father and then maintaining a relationship, all of this, he was stressed. And the holiday to Varna, to be honest, it was the welcome break that he needed from his active and stressful life. Some sources I've read say that Lars had never been outside of Germany. Other sources said that he had, but he'd been on like wilderness excursions to other places in Europe. So, but then again, this particular holiday, as I said, it was not one he'd done before, not his normal type of thing, but hey, he was going to do it. The 6 friends departed Germany on the 30th of June in 2014, and Lars very notably left his smartphone at home with his mother. He didn't want to ruin it because it was quite a new phone. He figured he wouldn't need a smartphone while he's abroad. He would be enjoying the socialization and the dancing and everything. So he took with him quite a cheap pay-as-you-go phone that you would normally apply minutes to. And I had one of those phones where it was something like £15 a month, and you got 50 minutes, 200 texts and something else. And I mean, we're going back like 20 years now, but this was the type of phone that he had on him. So all he could really do was text and make phone calls, but it needed to have the minutes and texts applied to it. The 6 friends arrived at Hotel Viva, which was located on the Golden Sands Resort in Varna, Bulgaria. Now, the coast there is right adjacent to the Black Sea. It is a well-known tourist area for people wanting to just go on fun, alcohol, clubbing and pub adventures, and just basically having a chilled, relaxing time on a beach resort. And that's exactly what these friends did. They went clubbing, socializing, drinking, sunbathing, eating, and Lars particularly, he went to the beach a lot, and he would play football with the local people there while his friends stayed at the hotel, because he loved the outdoors. He didn't want to be cooped up inside all the time. He bought fruit and veg from the local vendors at the beach. They said that he, was really, really friendly, very gregarious. And if you look at pictures of him, he has a very warm smile. He does seem like the kind of person that people would just be at ease around. 4 days into the holiday, on the 3rd of July, the friends went to a bar in Varna. Around 11 p.m, there was a kickoff of a game between Costa Rica and the Netherlands. Lars wore his SV Werder Bremen t-shirt. There were some Bayern Munich fans in the pub as well. And sometimes fans of opposing teams can get a little bit, rivalry can sometimes build up, but sometimes it's quite friendly. Apparently, it is normal. I'm not a soccer fan, but apparently it's normal for, after the match, for flags to be swapped between them. And it's not known exactly how this happened, whether it was Lars swapping flags or him just wearing his jersey, that got the Bayern Munich fans riled up. They weren't very happy with him, and his friends joined as well. There was a verbal altercation, but it was quickly dispelled, and everybody went their separate ways. Some reports say this argument got physical, but others say it was just verbal. Most of them do say it was verbal, because only very few say that there was a physical altercation, but most say it was verbal, bordering on the physical, but it was dispelled. And another reason why I think that is because nobody was kicked out of the bar. The police weren't called. They stayed at the bar until it closed at 4 a.m. It was actually Lars and his 5 friends who were the last to leave the bar. 2 of Lars's friends, Tim and Paul, said they wanted to go and get some food and they fancied McDonald's. Now, Lars didn't particularly like McDonald's, so apparently he said that he would wait outside for them. And again, this is where the sources vary. There are so many conflicting sources in this story. Some say that Lars said he would wait outside for them to get their food, and then he would rejoin them. Some said that he told his friends that he would go back to the hotel alone. It was a kilometre away. I don't know how he would have known his way. I mean, they'd only been there a few days. Even if you have been around a resort, to walk a kilometre on your own, I'd say is probably not the best thing to do. So I don't know which one of those to believe. The friends, after they got their McDonald's, went back to the hotel. Either they were expecting to see Lars there, or they thought that because he wasn't there when they got out of McDonald's, that he would have gone back at least. So they went back, but Lars wasn't there. He did arrive shortly after, but he wasn't in a good way. He complained of a severe pain in his left ear, which he said was due to him having been beaten up by a gang of either Bulgarian or Russians who had been hired by the Bayern Munich fans to beat him up because of what happened in the bar. He said to both his girlfriend that he'd spoken to on the phone and his friends that he kind of knew this because at the bar, one of the Bayern Munich fans did threaten Lars and said that there are people in Bulgaria who will, for very little money, be willing to beat someone up. Lars went to sleep. He woke up around midday on the 4th of July. He called his girlfriend again and she begged him to receive medical treatment because the pain in his ear had not abated, it had got worse. Lars said he didn't think that a medical office would be open on a Saturday, so he said he would just ride it out, rest it, and hopefully his ear will be feeling better. His friends even tried to get him to obtain medical treatment, and again he refused. That night, the Saturday night, they went out again. Nothing bad happened. It was just a pleasant evening of drinking and socializing. Everything was fine. And then over the 5th and the 6th of July, his friends decided to relax, so they did. So it was just a nice chilled out end to their holiday. They were due to fly home on the 7th of July. On the date of the return to Germany, Lars found that his ear just hadn't improved. He wasn't quite sure what damage had been done, but it must have been severe for it to be still hurting. He was concerned that his eardrum had been damaged. Now, this could be problematic when flying because the change in air pressure could mean that Lars's hearing could be permanently damaged, and being an engineer and having regular checkups and medicals, he would need to have his hearing at a certain quality, I suppose, to be able to continue to do his job, and he loved his job. The friends, like Lars's girlfriend, had said to him, please see a doctor. And this time, Lars relented. In the morning of Monday, the 7th of July, Lars visited a medical office and was diagnosed with having a ruptured eardrum, and he had a small crack in his jaw, but it was his ear that was the main concern. The doctor told him that he couldn't fly, and they referred him to the St. Anna Hospital in Varna for more checkups, more treatment, just to see if there was anything more that could be done or any more damage. Before going to the hospital though, Lars went back to the hotel to rejoin his friends, and he discussed with them what was going to happen. So it was agreed he would go to the hospital, but because he had to do that on the day they were going to fly back, he couldn't fly home with them. Some of the friends, or all of them, I'm not sure who, but they actually offered to stay with him. He was in a foreign country, he didn't speak the language, he didn't know his way around, and it wouldn't have been good for him to be alone. But Lars apparently was absolutely adamant to his friends. He said, don't. He said, just go home. I'll be fine. I'll catch up with you. I'll get another flight or I'll get another way out. And he insisted that they go home. So this was a point-blank refusal, and he was sure that his travel insurance would be able to get him home. At 8 p.m. that evening, the 5 friends departed the hotel, leaving Lars there. They went to the airport, and Lars took a cab to St. Anna Hospital. He was seen by an ENT specialist at about 8:40 p.m. But apparently this doctor was rude, mocking, condescending to Lars, and Lars couldn't speak Bulgarian. He could speak English, but apparently this doctor either refused or just didn't know how to converse with him in that language and was laughing at him. Now, Lars didn't speak Bulgarian, but he could tell from the tone that this doctor was just not interested in treating him. The doctor apparently laughed at him and actually refused to allow him admittance to the hospital for more investigation, instead just giving him a prescription of an antibiotic called Cefprozil 500. At the time, it was under the brand name of Cefsil. Despite this poor treatment, he was hit with a bill of 120 leva, which was in 2014 was between 48 and 49 pounds sterling, 83 to 84 US dollars, or 62 to 63 euros. An hour after he was first seen by the specialist, Lars left the hospital. The same cab driver was outside, and there was some speculation that the cab driver deliberately waited for Lars, somehow knowing that Lars wouldn't be staying at the hospital. You'd think after an hour somebody else would have hailed the cab or whatever, or he went away and came back and somebody else had to come back to the hospital, just happened to be there. Lars told the driver to take him to a, quote, cheap hotel. He took him to a place called the Hotel Color. It was situated in not as nice a place as the Golden Sands Resort. It was in a poorer area which was known for having high crime. There has been some speculation, and this is only speculation, that this cab driver had been commissioned by this hotel to bring people there. And that was why the driver waited outside for Lars for that reason too. Before entering the hotel, Lars looked on the other side of the road and saw there was a store there, and he thought about going to get some water. But he said there were some men outside that looked a bit dangerous, and he was a bit apprehensive given what had happened a few nights prior. So he went straight into the hotel. He paid for the room with his credit card. The cab driver actually said that Lars had given him quite a generous tip. That was around 10 past 10 that night. Lars then went to the bar, got some water, and took one of his Cefprozil tablets. Some say that he drank a little bit of alcohol too. Again, can't be 100% sure. Now we're going to get on to a very interesting timeline. This shows you a gradual and ever-increasing change in Lars's behaviour and what ultimately happened to him. So I'm just going to refer to my notes. At 11 p.m. on the 7th of July, Lars calls his mum and asks her to top up his phone, which she does. He asks her to make a claim with the travel insurance provider to ask if they could arrange for him to come home. Sandra Mittank made the claim and updated Lars accordingly. So far, he had a torn eardrum, been seen by a rude and utterly unprofessional, unethical doctor. Lars seemed to be okay. He had medication to stop an infection if it were to happen. He had a hotel room where he could rest, he could let the antibiotics do its job, and he could then make a later attempt to get home. He had a lifeline to his mother. But then after this, things get a bit strange. When Sandra calls Lars to tell him that she'd made the insurance claim, although it had not been successful, Lars tells his mother that he is rather anxious, and she could also tell he just sounds agitated. He tells her that there is, quote, something wrong with the hotel. He asks her to cancel his credit card because the hotel receptionist had copied it. It registered with him as an odd thing to do. So when he said copied it, I would assume he meant photocopy. He was sure that once he was home, he'd be able to unblock the cards. Sandra called the bank and they said yes, they could block the card. It could not be later unblocked. So she called Lars back and advised him. He told her to go ahead and cancel the cards anyway. He said he had enough cash on him. She did as he asked and she actually booked him a bus out of Bulgaria, because don't forget that Bulgaria and Germany are connected by land. You don't have to just fly. You can also drive or take public transport. And he was going to depart at 11:30 the following night. So Sandra told him to get some rest because he'd need it. He was going to be out of Bulgaria within 24 hours. But within minutes, Lars had called her back, saying once more there was something wrong with the hotel. He was convinced that people were listening to him, as the walls of the hotel seemed to be so thin that he could hear people, and he was convinced people were listening to him. He thought that he heard someone refer to him. He couldn't be sure. He kept his voice down to a whisper for this reason and told his mother they had to get out of the hotel. He spent some time in a lift before he departed the Hotel Colour. At 3 a.m, Lars called Sandra and told her he had left the hotel, but he was being pursued by 4 men who were trying to kill him. He'd hidden in a place where he said he was, quote, high up and could fall down. The call then ended. A few minutes after this phone call, Lars texted his mother and asked her what Cefprozil 500 is. Within 5 minutes, he sent another text asking the same question. It's worth noting that Cefprozil was a brand name of an antibiotic called Cefprozil, which is commonly prescribed in Bulgaria, not so much in Germany, and I've seen some reports that it's even banned in Germany, or at least in some parts of Germany, but it's particularly effective against ear, nose, throat infections. So it's, quite conceivable that it would be prescribed for somebody with a bust eardrum, but 500 milligrams is pretty strong. Sandra became anxious for her son, and although she'd sorted out a bus, she needed him home. She needed him out of Bulgaria. He was clearly not in a good way, so she did book him a flight for 4:20 p.m. on the 8th of July. Sandra continued to wait for her son to call her, because she didn't want to phone him and distract him if he was indeed being pursued. Lars at some point returned to the hotel colour. He was seen pacing around the lobby before going to his room and retrieving his holdall and his backpack. He left the hotel very quickly as he hailed a cab from somewhere outside the hotel at around 5 a.m. A cab pulled up who had a passenger in there already, a woman who noticed that Lars seemed restless, but he had very dilated pupils. Now, dilated pupils can be due to many things. Most people associate it with drug abuse or a side effect of a medication, alcohol, or it could be that he was so high on adrenaline. Lars soon arrived at Varna airport and made a call to his mother to let her know that he was there. His phone battery was low, so when they phoned each other, he couldn't stay on the phone with her for very long, so it was kept to the main essentials, no chit chat. Lars informed Sandra that he needed her to transfer him some money. Even though he'd said the night before that he had enough cash, he needed more. He didn't tell her how much he needed, and when she asked him, he didn't say. But he asked her to use something called Western Union. Now, this isn't something that Lars had ever used before. He had no knowledge about it before. Sandra had never heard of it before. Lars apparently could relay to her in great detail, step by step, how she could arrange this. He had apparently been told this by somebody at the airport, a man at the airport had told him all about Western Union. And somehow Lars could relay all of this in great detail without that person being there. They'd departed by this point. Lars, in fact, could tell her so well how to do this that Sandra very easily was able to wire him 500 euros by Western Union. Sandra then told Lars about the flight she'd booked for him and that he also had a bus ticket if he wasn't able to fly. She gave Lars a reference number for the Western Union transfer, and Lars is shown on CCTV arriving at the airport with a red backpack and a black holdall, wearing a bright yellow t-shirt and shorts. He speaks to a woman very briefly before walking past a wall that obscures where he goes next. He appears to be holding in his hand either maybe a bottle of water or a can or something. This was apparently to see the airport doctor to determine if he could fly. This is something that Sandra said he should do. She called him again, and even though he answered, all she could hear was a faint whisper or a muffled voice, and the phone cut off. Whether the phone lost its battery power or whatever, I'm not sure. But that was the last time that Sandra Mittank had contact with her son. At 9 a.m. on the 8th of July in 2014, Lars Mittank entered the airport doctor's office at Varna Airport, Bulgaria. He was in there for quite some time, around 45 minutes, and he was seen by a Dr. Kostal. He performed an examination. He put eardrops into Lars's ear, checked he didn't have a fever, his temperature was fine. The doctor wanted to prescribe Lars some more medication, something that Lars refused. It wasn't clear what it was. The doctor told Lars that yes, he could fly, he just had to sign a waiver, which Lars did. What happened next is unclear because the doctor changed their story 3 times, so they told 4 different stories. And the entrance to the consultation room was not covered by CCTV, so nobody really knows if what this doctor said is true. In the first version, Dr. Kostal said that somebody entered the consultation room while he was examining Lars, and this person was an airline worker who was apparently looking for Lars. This was very odd because Lars was being examined in the morning. His flight wasn't for hours later until the afternoon. He'd only just arrived at the airport. His mother had booked the flight just a few hours before. Who else knew that he was there? At this point, Lars became agitated and bolted from the consultation room. In the second version of the story, Dr. Kostal said that the person who entered was a construction worker working for the airport. Didn't ask for Lars, but this still made Lars anxious and Lars bolted. In the third version, Dr. Kostal said he didn't know the person who'd entered the room. And again, Lars bolted. In the fourth version, he said Lars didn't bolt from the room, but instead had asked to use the restroom. The doctor said yes, and Lars said that he would be back. It's very strange that someone would just randomly enter a doctor's consultation room, and why a construction worker? Why an airline worker? Because They wouldn't have any reason to go in that room. It's not a thoroughfare. And confidentiality, what if they were examining somebody and if you were the doctor's PA or something like that, you would still even knock and you would ask to be allowed admittance. You wouldn't just walk in. I have seen other reports that said that Lars had apparently said something like, "I don't want to die here," before bolting from the room. Apparently the person who had allegedly entered the room had been found, but this person wasn't even in Bulgaria at the time, so they didn't know why the doctor had named this person, even though in the third version he said he didn't know who this person was. Sandra Mittank tried repeatedly to call Lars, and her phone calls just went unanswered, so in desperation she phoned the airport. Now, I appreciate this is in Bulgaria, so people there would speak Bulgarian, but correct me if I'm wrong, but at an airport, shouldn't you have people there who are multilingual or bilingual, or have people there who speak other languages, or have a translator? But apparently nobody even attempted or wanted to converse with her in German, and Sandra Mittank actually spoke Russian, which is similar to Bulgarian. So she got even more desperate, and at 11 a.m. she called the honorary consulate in Varna and she spoke to a Mrs. Mitrova. An hour after calling, Mrs. Mitrova called Sandra back, and this is what she told Sandra. Lars had been reported to have been restless in the doctor's office. The doctor allowed him to use the restroom, but Lars didn't return. The doctor didn't raise any alarm because Lars had left his holdall and his backpack behind. But notably, the doctor did not tell Mrs. Mitrova about this elusive intruder to the room. The next day, Lars was officially declared a missing person in Germany, and Lars' employers actually hired a private investigator called, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Andreas Gutik. I hope that's right, as well as a Bulgarian lawyer to help locate Lars, because he had bolted from that doctor's office and he was never seen again. One of Lars' co-workers, a man named Frank, was also in Bulgaria on holiday. He went to the Varna airport on the 10th of July, offering to help with Lars, but he was met with the same dismissive attitude that Sandra had been. The private investigator and Sandra travelled to Bulgaria about a week or so later, and they met with Frank. They went to the airport, and it was at this point that Sandra was shown the CCTV footage of the last known movements of her son. Although she was actually told when she arrived, this was 19 days after her son disappeared, that the footage was not available. However, it was later made available to her. Remember I said before, the actual entrance to the doctor's office was obscured by a wall. There were no CCTV footage there. The same camera that captured Lars walking into the airport and going past that wall that's obscured showed him running, desperately running, out of that airport, and further cameras picked him up going right outside the airport to where all the coaches were. He then turned left and carried on running. He scaled a fence and just departed, just ran from the airport into a sunflower field. Lars has never been seen since. What is widely known online though is that what Sandra Mittank saw was a lot more in depth than the actual CCTV that we have access to online, which I've just shown. What she said about it was this: Lars sprints out of the airport door, stops abruptly, grabs his back pocket, wallet there, passport, orients himself right, left. On the right is Varna, that's where he was beaten. So to the left, there he sees at the same height, about 20 meters away, 2 police cars with uniforms. On the bus stop and behind them, a big heap of sand from the last renovation of the airport parking lot. Behind it, a field, then the highway, and behind it low forest/field vegetation, and then in the back mountains with some houses on the slopes. He decides, walks slowly to the police cars, to 5 meters in front of them, walks across the street at 11 o'clock and looks behind the bus, which was driving straight backwards slowly out of the car park. And when the bus drives forward, he runs towards the pile of sand, disappears behind it, and allegedly climbs over the 2.15 meter high fence into the field and disappears. She then went on to say, "I'm not crying. Although I'm seeing Lars for the last time, I am relieved. My feeling tells me that my son knows what he is doing. he is getting himself to safety. Now, when you look at the CCTV footage, this is what I gather, is the sprint from the doctor's office does seem very desperate. He wants to get away from that particular location as much as possible. But when he's outside, he slows to a jog. He doesn't look panicked, and he does put his hand in his back pocket. Now, it's worth noting that his passport was still in his bag. He couldn't get out of Bulgaria without it. I'm not sure about his wallet though, but everything else was there. His phone, his medication, his belongings, and even other medication he'd taken with him, because he'd taken like a first aid kit just in case. But he does seem to sort of walk at one point, so it's not like he's desperate to get away, and he doesn't seem to be looking behind him. And what we see online is him walking away from the airport, and then finally he does sprint towards a field, and you can see him, he's actually sprinting. When Lars's travel bag was examined, it was determined that he had taken 3 of the 20 prescribed tablets of Cefsil. So, well, 3 missing, so it can be assumed that he'd taken 3. However, this was on the inventory list, because if things are being left behind at an airport, they'll be examined just in case there's anything in there that is dodgy, and everything will be itemised. The Cefsil was itemised. Sandra was then given Lars' belongings. She went through them and checked them against the inventory when she was at her hotel. However, the Cefsil was missing. Everything else was there apart from the Cefsil. Now, read into that what you will, but I'm not sure what was going on there. Clearly, Lars didn't take them with him, otherwise it wouldn't have made its way onto the inventory. When Sandra inquired about this, she was handed another inventory without the Cefsil, as if that made it all better. She was wondering where her son's medication was, and was there anything sinister behind that. This case has been covered to death, absolute to death online. So many other true crime YouTubers have covered it. But what is fascinating is that there is no conclusive theory. There is no one scenario that we can all agree on as to what exactly was the cause of Lars' strange behaviour before and what's happened to him since, because there hasn't been a trace of him found anywhere in the world. He was wearing a bright yellow t-shirt, he was wearing shorts and his trousers and his socks, and he may well have had his wallet on him, but nothing has been found. Where he had actually gone was into a big field, and there were some forests around there, but let's not forget that there were many houses too. Lars was a very accomplished outdoorsman. Bulgaria would have been very hot indeed. I don't know what their wildlife is like there, and many people think he may have died of exposure or a wild animal, but surely there would have been some sign, a little bit of material from his clothes, something of his wallet, bones, anything, but nothing has been found. And Sandra Mittank, this is why she holds up belief that her son is still out there, because if there's been no remains or no sign whatsoever that he's either met with foul play or he's deceased or anything like that, she can only conclude that her son is still alive. Another thing that helps support that is that Lars's behaviour seems reminiscent of maybe memory issues, or he was experiencing some sort of psychosis. So the many different theories are that when he was beaten up by these Bulgarians or Russians, now many people dispute that this ever happened. Now, we only have Lars's word for it, but he told his girlfriend, he told his mother, he told his friends, he told the doctors. I think if that's what he's saying, he was beaten up, it may well have been by people who were paid to beat him up, but I don't really know if that is exactly what would have happened. Maybe. But they kind of left him off lightly with they just, would have just punched him in the face or whatever. He didn't have any other bruises on him. But pretty damn hard hit to the head it would have been. So let's just give him that did happen. He went out and partied with his friends the day after. He was the same old Lars, same usual Lars they all knew and loved, apart from the fact that he had a poor ear. And then the day after that and the day after that, so he went through the whole of the 4th, 5th and 6th, not fearing whatsoever. He went around in Varna. He went to the beach, although he didn't go out socialising so much in the last couple of days because that was that wind down phase of their holiday. He didn't say anything at all about being in fear of his life. But when he went to Hotel Color, that's when his behavior changed. Many people believe that that blow to the head caused a delayed psychosis due to TBI or traumatic brain injury. I do think that is pretty plausible. He may have been in a post-concussed state, and that is often, it means there's a delay. And in here we do have a delay between then and his behavior changing. Add to that he was alone in a foreign country. He was in a dodgy area. If you're in a hotel where, the walls of Hotel Color were very thin and you could basically hear everything, I wouldn't feel comfortable being in a place like that. And you've got very limited contact with your family, and he was suspicious of this antibiotic as well. He may well have been pursued by people, as he said, from Hotel Color, but we don't know for sure why he bolted from the airport. The doctor changing his story that many times, that is very suspicious. Now, my personal belief is that there was no intruder to that room. I don't think that would happen. I believe that was made up, or something happened that meant he had to make up a reason why Lars bolted, and it wasn't due to him, it was due to someone else. Nobody appears to be following him. He doesn't appear to be looking behind him. He's not hiding. And if what Sandra Mittank says is true, that he avoids the police, surely if he's in trouble, the best thing for someone to do at an airport is to alert security, is to go somewhere and hide and say, look, or in that doctor's office say, look, I'm scared. Can you please get security? I'm not happy. Why would he not take his belongings with him and his phone? Yes, he may well have been experiencing psychosis. He may have had repeated aneurysms which have disoriented him, and he doesn't know where he is. And that's possible. I think he probably was in a situation where he didn't know where he was, where he did forget where he was. All he could think about was survival. And when Sandra says about the footage that he looks like he knows what he's doing, I believe her. I believe he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing based on how he is at that moment. I don't believe it's drug-induced hallucination. I don't believe that he was high or anything like that, because he's not stumbling around, he's not moving this way, that he's not swaying. He looks like he does know what he's doing, but given his state at the time, and I think maybe his memory was impaired. And that's another reason why Sandra has hope for her son, because there are people out there, including, I believe it's a Canadian man called Anton, who was found in Brazil after having gone missing some years before. And people thought he was Lars. There was a huge saying he looked just like Lars. Now, actually, he didn't look just like Lars. When I looked at his picture, I could tell it wasn't him, but it turned out he wasn't him. He couldn't remember who he was. Something had happened to him. The other theory, well, there's two other theories. One of them is that Lars was being used as a drug mule. That the Bulgarians had hired people to give Lars a bag of drugs to swallow that he could then later excrete out. Hotel Color was the place at which it would be deposited, but he was so paranoid, or the drugs had somehow got into his system and caused some sort of hallucination, or he had let something slip, he hadn't done something right, and now because of if you betray a gang or don't do something right, you're going to be pursued to the end of the earth. He was concerned that he was going to be heavily pursued, and that's what was happening, that he had done something wrong. Yeah, there again, no evidence of that at all. And I think if you're going to be used as a drug mule, you could still go to the police and say, I am scared, this is what's happened to me. And Lars was a law-abiding citizen. He was an all-round good person. I don't see why he would have done that. And some people say that he was a willing accomplice in this. I doubt it, because this holiday was last minute. The last theory was that he had a psychotic break, because not so much because of the head injury, which may have contributed to it as well as medication, but because of his mental health. Now, he wasn't diagnosed with any mental health disorder. He didn't appear to be showing signs of it. However, please understand that Lars had been for 2 years under a hell of a lot of stress. His job, although he loved it, was stressful. He had a relationship. He had to go home at the weekends and look after his father. He was busy all the time. He probably didn't have any me time. And when it came to this holiday, this was the first time he could relax in a long while. But this holiday was anything but relaxing because of what happened. So maybe it just became the straw that broke the camel's back. It was just too much. And if you add to that the fact that, he may have been suffering from a TBI or post-concussive state, he may have had an adverse reaction to cefprozil. There have been some reports that this particular drug can have those type of effects, although extremely rare. It could be the combination of that and alcohol. He may have been taking other drugs. It could be many, many different factors. But what is clear is that Lars felt the need to run without anything other than the clothes on his back and what was ever in his pockets. Out of that doctor's office, out of that airport, and out of the whole of the vicinity of that airport in a country he didn't know. That spoke a language he didn't know. He had no idea how to navigate it. He had no way of doing that. And my belief is that he probably did have a lapse of memory. Something happened in that consultation room that the doctor missed, or something that Lars did or said that, I don't know, he may have suffered an aneurysm right there, and that may have been why the doctor changed his story, because no one's going to know what happened. I'm not accusing the doctor of doing anything, but maybe knowing something, or something happened with Lars that he doesn't want to reveal. I have no idea, but it's possible that Lars may have had schizophrenia, but there's no predisposition to it in the family that anyone can find. But Lars is still out there, alive or dead, he's out there. He hasn't been found, and he needs to be found. His mother needs this closure, his friends, his family, they all need this closure. There is a Facebook page dedicated to him about for finding him. I think there was one sighting of a man that looked a bit like Lars on a highway in Bulgaria, like someone who was hitchhiking, but it was never really substantiated. Lars Mittank is 5'11". He has blonde hair, he has rather small brown eyes, and his face is quite distinctive. I mean, what distinguishes him from Anton is that Anton had blue eyes, not brown as well. Lars has quite a distinctive nose, and he has quite a distinctive smile. When he smiles, his cheeks really puff out. He'd now be 35 years old. Lars was actually quite, he was a slim but muscular young man. He weighed about 180 pounds. If anyone thinks they know someone who looks like Lars, if anyone has seen anyone who's homeless or a drifter or a hitchhiker or anyone that may seem vulnerable, matching Lars's description anywhere in the world, please, please, please get in contact with someone. He may have lost his memory. And if you have lost your memory and you think you may be Lars Mittank, please get in contact with somebody, and I really hope he is found. I believe a lot of the internet sleuths, if we could, we'd go and scour everywhere, but it really takes everyone to look at every square inch to see if there's any clue anywhere. And I'm not sure if any John Does have been looked at and checked, but nothing official has been found. Nobody has found anything that belongs to Lars, and I don't think the cefprozil was ever found. There have been a lot of there's been a lot of speculation about potential cover-up in this case, and maybe things have been covered up because of either negligence or things people didn't want them to know, but that doesn't mean that Lars's disappearance was anything but him making the decision himself, albeit potentially with some memory issues. So that's where I'm going to leave this case. I would very much appreciate it if you could let me know if you want me to cover any particular cases. I want to do more cases from all around the world, unusual cases, strange cases, ones that are real mysteries and unsolved ones like this. I really do appreciate your help, and if you can please let people know about this channel so that more people can come to it and subscribe, or if you're not a subscriber yet, please consider becoming one. As soon as I get to the 1,000, I can launch a membership scheme. I I am so looking forward to that. I would love to get to the membership scheme. I probably will monetize the channel, but I'll have to be careful which ones I do and don't. And I think one of mine has a copyright claim, so I won't be able to anyway. I don't like the idea of people having to sit through ads when watching these type of videos. So I will ask you if you could please help me out by getting me to that subscriber limit, because I need more watch hours as well. And once we get there, we can get the membership going. I can make this a business so I can do this for a living. That would be so good. Thank you so much, my lovely little berries, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.